Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be discussing the highly anticipated 2021 Honda CRF300L that has finally been announced for the North American market. So I'll start off with an overview consisting of the key highlights and some slight concerns that I have personally. Addressing the big question of if you should buy this bike from a couple of different perspectives, whether you're a beginner, whether you're a novice rider, or like myself, you have experience with the CRF250L, as well as sharing some thoughts on my own and impressions based on my experience with my 2014 CRF250L that I'm riding here today. So hopefully this helps you in your purchase decision-making process. I had came across this post on Reddit. I know that Honda, they've released a lot of professional photos, but seeing this photo from someone who was able to see it in person, I think it's a great looking bike. The colors are quite different from what I've seen in previous CRF models. Jumping straight into the overview, for me, the highlights, of course, and for most people, is the 15% more power with the new 286cc engine. That's a 37cc increase combined with that just around 11 pounds of weight reduction. So that's going to be pretty interesting to see how that changes the dynamics of the bike. There is the addition of the slipper clutch. So the first thing I thought of actually was the Kawasaki Versys X300, because I've ridden that bike before, and the slipper clutch on that is just like feather light. So the Rally, I think, would be a closer comparison to the Versys X300. ABS, it's standard on the Rally now, and it is an option on the regular CRF300L. But with this ABS, you can actually turn it on and off, which is going to be really beneficial for that on-road safe riding. If you want to slide out the back wheel when you're on the dirt, definitely turn it off. Another upgrade with the Rally is it gets the 3.3 gallon tank, which is up from the previous 2.7 liter, which is really nice point to have for either highway trips or longer day trips. There is also the addition of a taller 6th gear, another point that will complement highway riding. Seat height does stay the same. However, it does add 3.5 centimeters of more ground clearance. There's also an updated display with the gear indicator. This is going to be a really good point for beginner riders. It's always a nice to have. And lastly, the front and rear suspension. The Showa suspension, Honda Canada actually followed up. It's been optimized for increased travel and spring rate compared to the previous 250L. Some other side notes, I believe the fuel cap is also redesigned, and for riders with larger feet, there's been a redesign of the foot peg area for riders with larger boots. The foot pegs have actually been slid back, so there's a little bit more room in that department, just making things a little bit less cramped. Another good point is that it has the same very long service intervals as the CRF250L, as opposed to something like the shorter intervals of the CRF450L. Jumping over to concerns, it's still a non-adjustable suspension. I know that people in the comments and the forums, they weren't too happy with that, although I understand that would completely alter the price quite a bit. The big complaint for North Americans, it's a bit of an elephant in the room, but only the tail light on this new bike is LED. We're still getting the halogen here in North America, I believe in Europe as well, whereas in the Asian market, specifically in Thailand, I know that, and I think in recent days, Australia is actually going to be getting the LED lights all around. So, I mean, my personal opinion, it's 2021, but hey, not too hard to change that out. Another thing that I noticed was no skid plate on the regular CRF300L based on the photos. And lastly, the Extreme Red is the only color available on both models. After, a couple of days seeing more photos, it's starting to grow on me, but Honda Canada has specifically confirmed there won't be a black paint scheme for 2021. jumping over to the big question, is this going to be your next bike? Is the CRF300L or the 300L Rally worth it to buy? I'm going to start things off from the perspective of a brand new rider. If you're a beginner, there are some really enticing things such as the gear indicator. That's going to be really helpful when you're learning and shifting through all the gears of that 6-speed transmission. There's also going to be the option of ABS that you can turn on and off. And lastly, the slipper clutch. So if you're downshifting, just getting used to that, you're not going to put too much power to the back wheels, start slipping out or anything like that. It's a super versatile bike. I've said this before. I call it a bit of a Swiss Army knife bike, the 250L at least. Commuting on it, going to work, as long as it's not too much highway, you shouldn't have a problem, especially in the city. It's a great bike for that. It's great on gas, low maintenance, and the cost overall is pretty reasonable, being a Honda. But if you're also a weekend warrior where you live close to some trails, you want to take it out on the weekends, you can have one bike that really fills those two voids pretty nicely. So going back to the point that it's a Swiss Army knife, it's not really amazing at one specific thing, but it's good at a lot of different things. And I really felt that with my CRF250L that I'm on right now. And, it's kind of heavy compared to the competition. The power, it's not the most powerful bike, but it is a Honda and it's built really well, and it's still a ton of fun in my personal opinion. So just based on these things, I would think that 300 is going to be a really solid bike. Another point, if you're looking for this as a first bike, seats on dual sports are generally pretty high. I believe the CRF, it sits at around 34 to 35 inches. So it's basically the same as the 250L, technically a quarter-inch more, which is so small, it's barely going to be noticeable, but that is something to consider if you're a shorter rider. I know that you could always throw in something like a Kuba lowering link. That's an option. But I would recommend doing this at your own risk, because this does change the geometry of the bike and it can affect handling. So I know that in Thailand, there's actually lowered versions of this bike straight from the factory. Totally makes sense why this wouldn't be the case for North American markets, but maybe I had to book a trip to Thailand one day to try out the lowered version of the CRF. For experienced riders, I think this is also going to make a really nice second bike or even a third bike. If you have something for the street and you want something with a little bit of that added versatility, the 300L is just a solid upgrade from the 250L. However, if you're more so looking for something on the budget, I would think that the 250Ls are going to see an uptick in the used market, so you might be able to pick one up for a pretty reasonable price. Lastly, for existing CRF250L owners, I would say yes and no. It's hard to say, again, because I haven't ridden one, but I don't necessarily see it as an absolute necessity to upgrade if you already have the 250L, as it is such a fantastic bike as it is. However, the big thing that stands out to me with this 2021 model is the highway capabilities. So when I was riding this 250L on the highways, I would have liked just a slight boost in power just to kind of feel a little bit more comfortable, especially anywhere between 100 to 120 kilometers an hour on the highway. So just consider that if you're doing more highway riding and you are explicitly looking at comparing the 250L and the 300L, I would definitely favor my decision towards the 300L. So my thoughts specifically to the Rally, I did compare it to the Versys X300 because of the slipper clutch. With that being said though, if you want something more for highway riding and you're more keen on looking at things in the used market, I would highly recommend checking out the used market for the Honda CB500X as well as the NC750X. So I know these aren't as off-road capable as the CRF line, but you do have a slight more stronger focus towards the power department and on long distance highway riding, which would be pretty beneficial in my opinion. But If you're already a 250L owner, maybe you can wait out for a 450L rally if that's ever going to happen. If you really care about suspension, I would also recommend checking out the Kawasaki KLX300. I believe it was recently announced. I do think it would be pretty cool if Kawasaki and Honda had supermoto variants like the Suzuki DRZ400 Supermoto. But what's really drawn my attention is I've been hearing about the CRF150L. I think it's been popular in Asia for quite some time. It's unlikely for North America, I know that, but maybe in like 5 years or so with the influx of new riders. But I would basically treat that as a bigger, more off-road capable Grom, and I could see that being a ton of fun. In conclusion, let me know in the comments below how you feel about the CRF300L and the new Rally. Are you going to be buying one? What do you like about it? What do you not like? Just drop a comment below. I'm happy to have a conversation and generate some more discussion in the community. And as always, if you enjoy my content, please click the like button and consider subscribing, as it does help me out a lot. And if not, I'd be happy to always hear about ways I can improve, so feel free to contact me in that regard. So until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you over on my next video.